The late autumn wind rustled through Redemption Valley as a man in an expensive suit sat in the stagecoach, methodically cleaning his gold-plated revolver. The other passengers shifted uncomfortably as Marshal William Hayes checked their travel papers, his eyes lingering on the wanted poster in his hand. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marshal Hayes studied the well-dressed passenger through narrowed eyes. Something about Sebastian Montgomery didn't sit right with him. No ordinary businessman would carry a revolver of that quality. The stagecoach was headed for Devil's Fork, a dusty mining town that had recently struck silver, attracting both fortune seekers and outlaws alike. Montgomery appeared to be reading financial reports, but his eyes occasionally darted to the rocky outcrops perfect for ambushes. When the stagecoach driver announced they were approaching Rattlesnake Pass, Montgomery subtly checked his ammunition while maintaining his facade of reviewing business documents. The pass lived up to its name, as shots rang out from above. 3 masked riders demanded the stagecoach stop, but Montgomery remained eerily calm. As the other passengers raised their hands in panic, he continued reading his papers with an almost theatrical indifference that seemed to infuriate the bandits. "Your valuables, fancy man," the lead robber demanded, pressing a rifle barrel against Montgomery's window. The bandit's breath smelled of cheap whiskey, and his hands trembled slightly on the weapon. Without looking up, Montgomery's response was almost bored. "I'd reconsider that decision if..." Cole had been tracking the notorious Shadow Gang for 6 months, following a trail of bodies and stolen silver across 3 territories. Their leader, a mysterious marksman known only as the Ghost, had evaded every lawman sent after him, leaving behind only empty safes and dead men. The gang had recently hit 3 silver shipments from Devil's Fork, leaving no survivors, except for their latest robbery, which had been different. They'd made a mistake and left a witness alive. That witness was now hidden somewhere in town, and Cole intended to find them before the Shadow Gang could correct their error. But first, he needed to establish his cover thoroughly. The real Sebastian Montgomery was a Boston investor who'd never set foot west of Chicago. Cole had intercepted his letters announcing his arrival, giving him the perfect disguise in a town desperate for Eastern capital. As night fell over Devil's Fork, Cole meticulously cleaned his distinctive revolver, a ritual that helped him think. The gold plating wasn't vanity. It was a calculated choice born from years of experience. In his line of work, he'd learned that a man with a flashy gun was often underestimated, written off as a showman rather than a killer. That mistake had cost many men their lives, and Cole wasn't above using such prejudices to his advantage. A commotion outside drew his attention. Through his window, Cole watched a rugged man in a worn duster coat break up a fight between miners with casual efficiency. The locals called him Shade, and he served as an unofficial peacekeeper in Devil's Fork. Something about his movement caught Cole's trained eye. The way he carried himself spoke of military training, possibly cavalry given his stance. Cole had learned long ago. Cole recognized the setup immediately. Kane and his companions were claimed jumpers notorious for scamming Eastern investors out of their money with worthless mines. They'd operated this scheme across 3 territories, sometimes killing their victims if the swindle failed. "Please join me, gentlemen," he said, maintaining his Boston accent while noting the positions of Kane's companions. Kane launched into his practiced speech about a guaranteed silver strike, complete with forged assay reports and crude maps. But Cole's attention was divided. Through the saloon's grimy windows, he spotted 2 riders entering town. Their horses bore the distinctive gait of military training, and their saddles showed signs of recent gunfire. The initial investment would be $50,000, Kane was saying, but the returns would be tenfold within 6 months. He pulled out more documents, including photographs of silver ore that Cole recognized from a different mine entirely. "So what do you say to that offer, Mr. Montgomery?" Kane finished, sliding over some forged documents that looked convincing at first glance. "We'll need an answer today, of course. Other investors are interested." "Fascinating proposition," Cole replied, carefully examining the papers with exaggerated attention to detail. Though I'm curious about one particular detail. He pulled out a magnifying glass, studying the claim's registration date with theatrical precision. Would you care to explain how you registered this claim in Carson City on April 15th, when the courthouse there burned down on April 12th? And why do these assay marks bear the stamp of an office that was shut down 2 years ago? Kane's face darkened, and his companions shifted position. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Family heirloom, Cole lied smoothly. My father believed in making an impression. In our line of work, appearance is everything. He poured 2 glasses, noting how Shade's eyes never stopped scanning the room. Their conversation was interrupted by gunfire outside. Both men moved instinctively, taking cover on opposite sides of the doorframe, with a coordination that spoke of similar training. The 2 riders Cole had spotted earlier were engaging in a shootout with the sheriff's deputies, their military-style tactics confirming his suspicions about their background. What happened next confirmed Cole's suspicions about Shade. The peacekeeper drew and fired in one fluid motion, his bullet striking the first rider's gun hand at 30 paces. The shot was perfectly placed to disable without killing, a level of precision that few men possessed. Before the second rider could react, Shade had already chambered another round with practiced efficiency. The second rider tried to return fire, but Shade's next shot was even more impressive. He ricocheted a bullet off a water trough, catching the rider in the shoulder from an impossible angle. Both men crashed to the ground, disarmed but alive, their military bearing evident in how they fell. "Mighty fine shooting," Cole commented, studying Shade's technique. The man's stance was definitely military, but there was something else, a precision that went beyond standard cavalry training. It matched reports he'd read about the Ghost's legendary accuracy. "You didn't do so bad yourself," Shade replied, nodding toward Kane and his men, who were watching. As they walked back into the saloon, Cole noticed something else. Shade's duster had shifted during the gunfight, revealing a glimpse of a distinctive holster design. It was custom-made, with a unique quick-draw mechanism that Cole had seen only once before, in a sketch from the Shadow Gang's last robbery. The witness had described it in detail to a sketch artist before disappearing. The manhunter kept his expression neutral as he ordered drinks for both of them. He'd come to Devil's Fork hunting the Shadow Gang's witness, but he might have found something far more valuable, their leader himself. The question now was whether to make his move or wait for Shade to lead him to the rest of the gang. Either way, Cole knew the quiet facade of Devil's Fork was about to shatter. He just hoped he'd be the one choosing when and how. As he raised his glass in a toast to Shade, he was already planning his next move, knowing that sometimes the deadliest predator wasn't the one with the fastest gun, but the one with the most patience. The rising sun cast long shadows across Devil's Fork as a lone rider approached from the east. Sarah Hawthorne, known in certain circles as the Shadow, had built her reputation tracking the most dangerous outlaws across the territories. Her arrival went unnoticed by most, except for Cole, who watched from his hotel window while pretending to review mining contracts. Hawthorne's reputation preceded her, 32 confirmed kills, all documented with meticulous precision in the territorial marshal's records. Unlike other bounty hunters who relied on brute force, she was known for her analytical approach and her signature weapon, a modified Winchester rifle with a custom-made scope, crafted by a gunsmith in St. Louis who'd mysteriously disappeared shortly after completing the work. Meanwhile, Cole observed the interaction from across the street, pretending to examine mining equipment at Henderson's Supply. Hawthorne's arrival complicated matters significantly. He'd crossed paths with her once before in Wyoming, though she didn't know his real identity. She'd nearly caught him during a particularly challenging bounty hunt, proving herself one of the few hunters worthy of his respect. That encounter had cost him 2 weeks of tracking and a bullet graze on his left arm. Later that afternoon, Hawthorne entered the Silverhorn Saloon, choosing a table that gave her a clear view of Cole's position. Their eyes met briefly, a silent acknowledgement between predators. She ordered coffee instead of whiskey, another detail that set her apart from typical bounty hunters. Cole noticed how she positioned herself, back to the wall, clear lines of sight to all exits, just as he would have done. "Miss Hawthorne," Cole approached, maintaining his Montgomery persona with practiced ease. "Sebastian Montgomery, Boston Consolidated Mining. Your reputation precedes you." He noticed how her right hand never strayed far from her modified holster. "As does yours, Mr. Montgomery," she replied, her hand casually resting near her weapon. "Though I find it curious that a Boston businessman knows of my work. Most mining executives don't keep track of bounty hunters in the territories." Their conversation was interrupted by Shade's entrance. The tension in the room shifted immediately as all three studied each other with professional interest. Shade's hand drifted to his modified holster, while Hawthorne's fingers traced the engraved stock of her rifle. The few remaining patrons quietly excused themselves, sensing the deadly undercurrent in the room. "Are we?" Hawthorne's scope was trained on Cole's chest, her breathing measured and controlled. "Because I'm starting to think we're all hiding something, including our friend in the duster." Shade chuckled, but his hand hadn't moved from his holster. "In my experience, people who ask too many questions in Devil's Fork tend to have short life expectancies. This town has its own way of handling curiosity." "Is that a threat?" Hawthorne's finger tightened on the trigger, the modified sight giving her a clear advantage in the enclosed space. "More like a friendly warning," Shade replied, his stance shifting almost imperceptibly. "This town has enough troubles without adding 3 gunslingers' egos to the mix. The Shadow Gang has everyone on edge." Cole assessed his options. He could maintain his cover or acknowledge the truth, knowing either choice could prove fatal. Before he could decide, gunshots erupted outside. Kane and his men had returned with reinforcements, their voices carrying threats of revenge. The 3 gunslingers moved in perfect synchronization, taking defensive positions. Despite their mutual suspicion, years of experience took over. Cole's gold-plated revolver appeared in his hand while Hawthorne's rifle found its mark through the window. Shade positioned himself to cover both exits, his movements suggesting years of tactical training. "Perhaps," Cole suggested, aiming at Kane's gang, "we could postpone our discussion until after we deal with our uninvited guests." Shade nodded, a newfound respect in his eyes. "Agreed. But afterward, we're going to have a long conversation about who's really who in Devil's Fork." As bullets shattered the saloon's windows, Cole couldn't help but smile. The game had changed, and now he had to figure out which of his new allies might actually be his target. One thing was certain. Devil's Fork was about to witness a showdown unlike any in its history, and only one of them could be telling the truth about their identity. As gunfire erupted outside the Silverhorn Saloon, a new figure emerged from the shadows of Devil's Fork. Victor the Ghost Blackwood, leader of the Shadow Gang, watched the chaos unfold from his hidden vantage point in the abandoned bell tower. Through his brass spyglass, he observed Cole, Hawthorne, and Shade, engaging Kane's men with lethal precision. Blackwood wore a black duster with silver buttons, each engraved with a distinctive skull pattern. His face bore a web of burn scars from a prison fire he'd orchestrated 5 years ago. That escape had cost 17 lives, but it had given birth to the Shadow Gang's infamous leader. "Interesting development," he muttered to his lieutenant, Marcus Reed. 3 of the deadliest shots in the territory, all in one place. He collapsed the spyglass with a practiced motion. "And all of them are hunting us." Reed shifted nervously. "Should we abandon the plan?" "On the contrary," Blackwood smiled, revealing a gold tooth. "This is perfect. Let them tear each other apart trying to figure out who's who." He pulled out his signature weapon, a customized LeMat revolver capable of firing both pistol rounds and shotgun shells. Below, Blackwood's infiltrator in the sheriff's office, Deputy Hayes, was already spreading carefully crafted misinformation about the Shadow Gang's movements. The real plan was far more ambitious than a simple silver heist. Devil's Fork sat on a crossroads of 3 major silver shipment routes. By controlling the town, they could control the entire territory's silver flow. Blackwood had spent months preparing, placing men in key positions throughout Devil's Fork. The saloon keeper, the telegraph operator, even the undertaker, all were on his payroll. But his masterpiece was Shade's identity. The mysterious peacekeeper's reputation for precision shooting had been carefully constructed to draw attention away from Blackwood himself. "The witness is secured?" Blackwood asked, though he already knew the answer. The young bank clerk who'd survived their last robbery was currently housed in an abandoned mine shaft, kept alive only because his death would bring too much attention. "Yes, sir. But he's getting nervous. Keep on asking about his family." Blackwood's scarred face twisted into a cruel smile. "His family is safe, right, for now? As long as he remembers that, he'll behave." He checked his pocket watch, a trophy taken from a territorial judge he'd killed. Time to move to the next phase. From his position, he could see Cole, or whatever his real name was, maintaining his businessman facade. Blackwood had crossed paths with the manhunter before, though Cole wouldn't recognize him now, not with the burn scars. That encounter had taught him the value of hiding in plain sight. "Send word to our men in the mines," Blackwood ordered. "Start the cave-ins tomorrow. Small ones at first, just enough to spook the investors." His plan required precision timing. First, destroy confidence in the mines. Then, when the silver shipments were rerouted through alternate trails, his men would be waiting. The arrival of Hawthorne was an unexpected variable, but not an insurmountable one. Her reputation for analytical thinking made her dangerous, but it also made her predictable. She'd look for patterns, try to anticipate his moves. That's why his next action would defy all logic. "What about Kane and his men?" Reed asked, watching the ongoing gunfight. "Leave them, they're useful idiots, drawing attention exactly where we want it." Blackwood had secretly funded Kane's return to Devil's Fork, knowing the ensuing chaos would provide perfect cover for his true operations. A bullet whizzed past the bell tower, reminding them to stay hidden. Blackwood watched as Cole, Hawthorne, and Shade worked together to defend the saloon, their movements betraying years of professional experience. 3 hunters, all chasing shadows, he mused. But they haven't realized yet. In this town, the shadows are chasing them. He gave final instructions to Reed about the next day's operations. The silver shipment schedule, carefully stolen from the telegraph office, showed 3 major transports converging on Devil's Fork within the week. The timing couldn't be better. "Remember," Blackwood concluded, "let them chase their theories about Shade. The best trap is the one your prey walks into willingly." He checked his Lamat revolver one last time. "By the time they realize their mistake, Devil's Fork will be ours, and there'll be nothing but 3 more stories for the Undertaker to tell." The Ghost's reputation hadn't come from random violence. Every move was calculated. Every casualty served a purpose. As he descended the bell tower's hidden staircase, Blackwood smiled at the sound of continuing gunfire. The game was becoming more interesting by the hour, and he was the only one who knew all the players. Deputy Hayes entered the bell tower through a concealed door, his badge glinting in the dim light. "They're getting suspicious, boss, especially that woman Hawthorne. She's been asking questions about the mine collapse patterns." Blackwood nodded thoughtfully. His network of informants had painted a detailed picture of each hunter. Hawthorne's methods were methodical. She'd already connected several seemingly unrelated incidents to the Shadow Gang's operations. Cole's presence complicated matters further. The man had an uncanny ability to see through deceptions. "Let them investigate," Blackwood replied, checking the modified ammunition in his Lamat. "Every hour they spend chasing false leads is another hour we have to complete our preparations." He pulled out a detailed map of the surrounding territory, marked with carefully planned escape routes and supply caches. The map revealed the true scope of Blackwood's ambitions. Devil's Fork wasn't just another mining town. It was the key to controlling silver distribution across 3 territories. The railroad construction 50 miles east would soon make it even more valuable. His gang had spent months establishing hidden camps along the planned rail route. "What about the Prescott shipment?" Hayes asked, referring to the largest silver transport scheduled for the coming week. "That's where our mysterious friend Shade comes in." Blackwood's scarred face twisted into a calculating smile. His reputation for stopping robberies has convinced the shipping companies to consolidate their routes through Devil's Fork. They think they're being clever, combining shipments for better protection. The intricate nature of Blackwood's scheme became clear. Every robbery, every staged incident had been orchestrated to manipulate the silver companies into exactly this position. Even the witness's survival had been deliberate. His testimony about the gang's methods had predictably led to the current security arrangements. "The miners are getting restless," Hayes reported. "Talk of forming a protection committee." Perfect. Blackwood examined his reflection in the spyglass's brass surface. The burn scars a constant reminder of the price of underestimation. Fear makes men predictable. They'll be so focused on protecting themselves from obvious threats, they won't see the real danger until it's too late. Through the spyglass, he observed Hawthorne examining the recent mine cave insights. She was getting close to discovering the pattern, how each collapse had strategically weakened Devil's Fork's economic stability. But she hadn't yet realized these were just the opening moves in a much larger game. "Keep watching our 3 hunters," Blackwood instructed Hayes. "Let them continue believing Shade might be the ghost. The more they focus on each other, the less they'll look in the right direction." He checked his pocket watch again, noting the time of the next scheduled silver shipment inspection. The ghost's intricate plan had been years in the making, each piece carefully positioned. The arrival of 3 skilled hunters hadn't been anticipated, but like every other variable, they would be turned to his advantage. In the end, Devil's Fork's fate had been sealed the moment Victor Blackwood set his sights on it. The hunters were just the latest players in his elaborate production. As night fell over Devil's Fork, Blackwood reviewed his next moves. Tomorrow's staged confrontation between Kane's men and the hunters would provide cover for his men to move the cached weapons into position. By the time anyone realized the true nature of his plan, the Shadow Gang's control would be complete. The morning after the saloon shootout, Cole put his first major play into action. After studying the patterns of Shade's patrols, he'd identified a crucial weakness in the supposed peacekeeper's routine. Every day at noon, Shade would check on the silver storage at the assayer's office. A pattern too precise to be coincidence. Cole arrived early, positioning himself in the shadows of the livery stable. His gold-plated revolver was freshly cleaned, each chamber loaded with custom ammunition. Through careful observation, he'd noticed something peculiar about the assayer's office. The back window had recently been modified, widened just enough to accommodate a man's shoulders. Hawthorne was watching too, though she didn't know Cole had spotted her position on the hotel's roof. Her Winchester's scope occasionally caught the sunlight, a rookie mistake that made Cole question her reputation. Unless, he realized, she wanted to be seen. "Mr. Montgomery," Shade's voice came from behind him. "Admiring the horses?" Cole turned slowly, maintaining his businessman facade. "Actually, I was wondering about your security arrangements. The recent robberies have my investors concerned." "Strange concern for a man who isn't really from Boston," Shade replied, his hand resting casually near his modified holster. "I had another interesting telegraph this morning. Seems the real Montgomery's business partner is getting worried about his silence." The tension crackled between them. Cole noticed Shade's stance had shifted slightly, the same stance he'd seen illustrated in the witness's description of the ghost. But something wasn't quite right about it. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," Cole suggested, gesturing toward the alley behind the stable. As they moved away from the main street, Cole implemented his plan. He'd deliberately left tracks in the morning dust, leading Shade exactly where he wanted him. The alley contained several carefully arranged mirrors, ostensibly for the horses but positioned to give Cole multiple angles of view. "You're good," Cole admitted, dropping his Boston accent. "But not good enough. The ghost wouldn't make such obvious mistakes." Shade's expression flickered. "What mistakes?" "Your holster's custom-made, true, but it's a right-handed design. The ghost is known to be left-handed." Cole's hand moved closer to his revolver. "You're a decoy." The realization hit Shade just as Hawthorne's rifle cracked from above. The bullet struck precisely where Cole had predicted, the loose board he'd noticed earlier, sending up a cloud of dust. In that moment of confusion, Cole made his move, His gold-plated revolver seemed to materialize in his hand. The first shot knocked Shade's weapon away, while the second and third disabled the two hidden gunmen Cole had spotted earlier in the shadows. The entire sequence took less than 3 seconds. "Impressive," Shade coughed through the dust. "But you've just shown your hand." "Have I?" Cole smiled. "Or did I just prove you're not who you're pretending to be? The real Ghost would never have fallen for such an obvious trap." From her position, Hawthorne had a clear view of the entire scene. Her rifle remained trained on Shade, but her expression showed she was recalculating her theories. The pieces were falling into place, but not in the way any of them had expected. Cole kept his revolver steady. The witness described the Ghost's shooting style in detail. "You're good, but you're mimicking someone else's technique. The question is, why?" Shade's composed facade cracked slightly. "You seem very well informed for a bounty hunter. And you seem very interested in maintaining a specific reputation," Cole countered, "almost as if you're trying to draw attention away from someone else." The confrontation was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. Kane's men had returned, but this time Cole was ready. He'd anticipated this response, knowing that any challenge to Shade's authority would draw out the various players in Devil's Fork's complex game. "We're not finished," Cole told Shade, his gold-plated revolver disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. "But right now, we have more pressing matters." As gunfire erupted once again in Devil's Fork streets, Cole had achieved his first real victory. He'd proven Shade wasn't the Ghost, eliminated 2 of the Shadow Gang's hidden gunmen, and most importantly, forced their real leader to accelerate his plans. The game was changing, and Cole had just made the first decisive move. But as he took cover behind a water trough, he couldn't help wondering if this victory was exactly what the real Ghost had been waiting for. Cole's victory had another layer of complexity. During the confrontation, he'd spotted something crucial, a distinctive scar on Shade's right hand that didn't match any known descriptions of the Ghost. But it did match reports of a former cavalry officer who'd served under Victor Blackwood during the war. As Kane's men scattered under the combined firepower of Cole, Hawthorne, and Shade, the pieces of a larger puzzle emerged. Cole's staged confrontation had revealed more than just Shade's deception. The timing of Kane's attacks, too precise to be coincidence, suggested coordination. "Your shooting's gotten better since Fort Gibson," Cole called out to Shade between shots. The reference to the cavalry outpost caused a visible reaction, confirmation of Cole's suspicion about Shade's military background. Hawthorne, still positioned on the roof, had shifted her aim. Through her scope, she'd noticed the same details Cole had. "The ammunition they're using," she shouted down. "Army issue, but modified. Custom loads." Cole nodded. The Shadow Gang's tactics had always shown military precision, but this was the first concrete evidence linking them to Army supplies. "Check the shells," he called back. "Quarter load, less powder, quieter shots." The firefight moved down the street, driving Kane's men toward the abandoned silver mill. Cole recognized the maneuver. It was a standard cavalry flanking technique, but with one critical difference. The Ghost had modified it, using buildings instead of terrain for cover. "They're hurting us," Shade warned, his military training evident in how he read the situation. But Cole had anticipated this too. His earlier preparations included strategic placement of mining mirrors, giving him glimpses of hidden shooters on the rooftops. With practiced precision, Cole fired 3 rapid shots. Each bullet found its mark, disabling more of the Shadow Gang's concealed gunmen. His gold-plated revolver caught the sunlight, momentarily blinding one of Kane's men who'd been aiming at Hawthorne. 8 o'clock, Cole shouted to her. Hawthorne's rifle cracked in response, her bullet striking a hidden shooter Cole hadn't even spotted. Their impromptu cooperation was revealing another layer of Devil's Fork's secrets. The town's architecture itself had been modified for ambush points. The victory wasn't just in exposing Shade or eliminating enemy gunmen. Cole had forced the Shadow Gang to reveal part of their infrastructure. Each shooting position they used, each tactical response, added to his understanding of their operation. As the gunfire finally subsided, Cole holstered his weapon with deliberate slowness. Cavalry tactics, modified for urban warfare, he said to Shade. Interesting choice. Almost like someone's been teaching them. Shade's expression remained neutral, but his eyes betrayed recognition. The game had shifted, and all three of them knew it. Cole's orchestrated confrontation hadn't just proven Shade wasn't the ghost. It had revealed the existence of a much larger, more organized operation than anyone had suspected. As the dust settled over Devil's Fork, Cole knew his victory would force the ghost's hand. The real question was whether he'd revealed too much of his own knowledge in the process. Sometimes, he reminded himself, winning the first hand means losing the game. Hawthorne confronted Cole at midnight behind the Silver Spur Hotel. Her Winchester was trained on his chest, moonlight glinting off the custom scope. "Start talking," she demanded. "You know more than you're showing. Fort Gibson wasn't common knowledge." Cole kept his hands visible, the gold-plated revolver still holstered. "You've been following me longer than just Devil's Fork, Miss Hawthorne. Or should I say, Captain Sarah Hawthorne, formerly of Army Intelligence." Her trigger finger tightened slightly. "How long have you known?" "Since Wyoming. The way you tracked me then, military precision. Only Army Intelligence taught those techniques." Cole moved slowly, keeping his distance. "The question is, why is Army Intelligence interested in the Shadow Gang?" "They stole more than silver," Hawthorne replied, her rifle unwavering. "Last month's shipment contained classified military documents, plans for the new transcontinental route." The pieces clicked into place. Cole had wondered why the ghost would risk such high-profile robberies for mere silver. The railroad. That's what this is really about. The ghost isn't just a bandit. He's selling information to foreign interests. Hawthorne's voice hardened. "But you already knew that, didn't you? Just like you knew about Shade's cavalry connection." Cole calculated his options. The confrontation with Shade had revealed too much, made him too obvious a target. The ghost was Army Intelligence too. That's how he knows your methods. "Victor Blackwood," Hawthorne confirmed, "burned half his face escaping custody. But you're not just another bounty hunter tracking him, are you?" Their standoff was interrupted by movement in the shadows. 3 of Kane's men emerged, weapons drawn. But something was off about their stance. Too professional, too controlled. "Actually," Cole said quietly, "they're not Kane's men at all." The disguised soldiers moved with military precision, but Cole and Hawthorne were already in motion. Cole's revolver cleared its holster as Hawthorne's rifle cracked twice. 2 attackers fell, while Cole's shot disarmed the third. "Ghost's men," Hawthorne confirmed, checking their uniforms. "Army deserters like him." "He's building an army, not a gang," Cole observed. "Using the silver to fund it, the robbers train them. And you're here to stop him. Who do you really work for, Cole?" Before he could answer, more shots rang out from the rooftops. They took cover behind water barrels, falling into an instinctive rhythm. Cole's revolver kept the attackers' heads down, while Hawthorne's rifle picked them off one by one. "Treasury Department," Cole admitted between shots. "Ghost isn't just selling information. He's counterfeiting banknotes using stolen treasury plates." Hawthorne processed this while reloading. "The silver shipments are cover. He's distributing counterfeit currency through legitimate channels." Their coordination was perfect, born from years of similar training. Cole's quick shots drove targets into Hawthorne's firing lanes, while her precision fire kept them from being flanked. "We could work together," she suggested, dropping another attacker with a clean shot. "Army Intelligence and Treasury." "Tried partnership once," Cole replied, his gold-plated revolver flashing in the darkness. "Didn't end well." "Wyoming," she remembered. "But this is bigger than both of us. Ghost isn't just building a criminal empire. He's funding something worse." The firefight intensified. More of the Ghost's men emerged using classic Army flanking maneuvers. Cole and Hawthorne found themselves slowly surrounded, their position increasingly precarious. "Truce?" Cole offered his back against hers as they faced opposite directions. "Temporary." Hawthorne agreed, her rifle never stopping. But after this, we need to talk about what really happened in Wyoming. Their combined skills turned the tide. Cole's lightning-fast shooting style complemented Hawthorne's methodical precision. Within minutes, the remaining attackers retreated, leaving behind enough evidence to confirm their military connection. "Ghost will know we've figured it out," Cole said, reloading his revolver. "Good," Hawthorne replied, slinging her rifle. "Maybe now we'll see his real plan." They parted ways without lowering their guards, each knowing the temporary alliance could shatter at any moment. But something had changed in Devil's Fork that night. The hunters had become the hunted, and the Ghost's game had entered a new phase. As Cole watched Hawthorne disappear into the darkness, he wondered if she'd discovered his other secret, the real reason the treasury had sent him. Some truths, he decided, were better left buried in Wyoming snow. "There's something else you should know," Hawthorne said, turning back. "The Ghost's counterfeiting operation isn't just about money. He's replicating military orders, requisition forms, even officer credentials." Cole holstered his revolver, pieces falling into place. Creating an entire shadow army. The silver robberies establish his legitimate presence while the forgeries build his infrastructure. Exactly. But why Devil's Fork? There are richer targets. Hawthorne pulled out a map marked with the Ghost's known activities. Unless he's not just after the silver roots, Cole finished. Devil's Fork sits at the intersection of 3 territories. Control this town. Control the entire region's military response capabilities. Hawthorne nodded. My superiors thought he was selling information to foreign powers, but he's building his own power base right here. Their conversation was interrupted by distant hoofbeats. 3 riders approached from the east, their horses' gaits revealing military training. Cole and Hawthorne took positions on opposite sides of the street, their earlier conflict temporarily forgotten. "Army, patrol, patterns," Cole observed. "But no Army patrols are scheduled tonight." "Ghost's men testing the town's defenses," Hawthorne agreed. "Notice how they're mapping sightlines, response times." The riders passed directly under their positions, unaware they were being watched. Cole counted 12 hidden weapons between the 3 men, standard Army cavalry loadout, but with modifications. "That rifle scope of yours," Cole said quietly. "Custom made in St. Louis, wasn't it?" Hawthorne stiffened. "How did you—" "Same gunsmith who modified the Ghost's weapons before he disappeared. Victor Blackwood's personal weaponsmith during the war." "You've been investigating longer than the Treasury admits," Hawthorne accused. "What really happened to that gunsmith?" Cole's expression darkened. "Same thing that happens to anyone who gets too close to Blackwood's operation. Unless we stop him here." The night revealed one final secret as the riders passed. Each wore a cavalry insignia that shouldn't exist, perfect forgeries of a unit disbanded after the war. The Ghost wasn't just building an army, he was recreating his old command. As they watched the riders disappear into the darkness, both knew their rivalry had transformed into something more complicated. The fate of 3 territories might depend on whether they could trust each other despite their past. Wyoming wasn't what you think, Cole said finally. But that's a story for another night. Hawthorne nodded, understanding the weight of unspoken truths between them. Devil's Fork's future hung in the balance, and the Ghost's next move would test their fragile alliance to its limits. Dawn broke over Devil's Fork as Cole and Hawthorne met with Shade in an abandoned mining office. Maps covered the walls, each marking confirmed Shadow Gang activities. The 3 hunters had reached an uneasy alliance born of necessity. "Ghost's operation is bigger than we thought," Cole began, pointing to delivery schedules. "He's not just counterfeiting currency. He's creating an entire parallel infrastructure." Shade nodded grimly. "I was his cavalry lieutenant during the war. After he burned half his face escaping custody, I spent 3 years tracking him. I thought I could stop him alone. By pretending to be him, Hawthorne challenged, her Winchester never far from reach. By drawing his attention, Shade corrected. Every time he sends men to test me, I learn more about his operation, but he's always 3 steps ahead. Cole unrolled a detailed map of the territory. Treasury Department's been tracking his counterfeiting. Army intelligence, his information theft. But we've all missed the bigger picture. His finger traced the planned railroad routes. He's positioning for something larger. The silver shipments are just the beginning, Hawthorne added. Each robbery tests different tactical approaches. He's training an army while funding it. Shade moved to the map, pointing out defensive positions. Devil's Fork wasn't chosen by accident. 3 territories intersect here. Control this town. Control the entire region, Cole finished. But we have one advantage, the witness from his last robbery. If we can find him, Hawthorne interjected. Ghost wouldn't leave a loose end alive unless it served his purpose. Their planning session was interrupted by gunfire in the street. Through the grimy windows, they spotted Kane's men engaging in another shootout. But this time, they recognized the calculated nature of the attack. Testing response patterns, Shade observed. Every conflict reveals more about the town's defenders. Cole's gold-plated revolver cleared its holster. Then let's show them something unexpected. The 3 hunters moved with coordinated precision. Hawthorne's rifle provided high ground coverage while Cole and Shade worked the street level. Their combined skills turned what should have been a chaotic gunfight into a tactical demonstration. Like Fort Gibson, Shade called out between shots, referencing their shared military past. Remember the flanking maneuver? Cole nodded, his revolver dropping 2 attackers with practiced ease. With modifications, Hawthorne watched the roofline. Her rifle cracked in response, eliminating a hidden sniper. The 3 worked in perfect synchronization, each covering the other's blind spots. Years of individual experience merged into a formidable team. As the gun smoke cleared, they regrouped in the mining office. Ghost will notice this cooperation, Hawthorne warned, reloading her Winchester. Good, Cole replied. Force his hand. Make him accelerate his plans before he's ready. Shade studied the map again. There's an army payroll shipment coming through next week, heavily guarded, but perfect opportunity for him to test his forged documents, Cole finished. We'll be ready. The alliance was tenuous, built on shared danger rather than trust. Each hunter kept their own counsel, aware that betrayal could come from any quarter. But for now, they needed each other. One condition, Hawthorne stated firmly. Complete transparency. No more hidden agendas. Cole and Shade exchanged glances, knowing each still held secrets, but against the Ghost's growing threat, they had no choice. Agreed, Cole said finally. Starting with what really happened at Fort Gibson. Ghost's scars weren't just from a prison fire. As they settled in to share their knowledge, each knew this alliance could shift the balance in Devil's Fork. The question was whether they could trust each other long enough to stop the Ghost's master plan. The sound of approaching horses interrupted their discussion. Through the window, they spotted more of the Ghost's men, dressed as regular cavalry patrol. Their coordinated movements revealed their true identity. It begins, Shade murmured, checking his modified holster. The hunters took their positions, a newfound unity in their purpose. Devil's Fork's fate would depend on whether 3 lone wolves could truly work as a pack. The Alliance's first test came sooner than expected. As they watched the Ghost's men patrol, Shade revealed another crucial detail. He's not just replicating military orders. He's creating an entire command structure. Each robbery establishes another piece of his shadow army. Hawthorne unfolded additional intelligence reports. Army's been tracking unusual troop movements, soldiers appearing where they shouldn't be, orders that don't exist in official channels. That's why the Treasury got involved, Cole admitted. He's not just counterfeiting money, he's fabricating an entire military bureaucracy. Every forged document, every false order builds his legitimate presence. The 3 hunters began formulating a complex strategy. Cole's experience with treasury operations complemented Hawthorne's intelligence background, while Shade's intimate knowledge of the Ghost's military tactics filled crucial gaps. "His men will hit the payroll shipment here." Shade pointed to a narrow pass. "Classic ambush point." But that's not his real target, Cole realized. The shipment carries something more valuable than money. Hawthorne nodded. "Military command seals. With those, he can authorize troop movements across all 3 territories." Their planning was methodical, each contributing their specialized knowledge. Cole detailed Treasury Department protocols. Hawthorne mapped intelligence networks, and Shade revealed the Ghost's tactical preferences. "There's still something we're missing," Cole mused, studying the patterns. "Why maintain Kane's gang as a separate operation?" "Distraction," Hawthorne suggested. "We're keep the town focused on obvious threats, on." "No," Shade interjected. "Training. Each confrontation with Kane teaches his real men how the town responds to threats." The complexity of the Ghost's strategy became clear. Every piece served multiple purposes: the silver shipments, the forged documents, even the witnesses' survival. He wasn't just building an army, he was creating an entire shadow government. As night fell, the 3 hunters sealed their alliance with a dangerous gambit. They would spring the Ghost's trap, but on their terms. Cole's treasury connections would verify the payroll shipment, Hawthorne's intelligence network would track troop movements, and Shade would predict the Ghost's tactical approach. "One last thing," Cole said, checking his gold-plated revolver. "When this ends, we settle Wyoming." Hawthorne's grip tightened on her Winchester. "Agreed. But first, we end the Ghost's operation." Shade nodded, understanding the weight of unspoken debts between his new allies. The hunt for Victor Blackwood had brought 3 deadly adversaries together. Whether their alliance would survive his defeat remained to be seen. Their plan collapsed at dawn. The payroll shipment was a trap, but not the one they expected. As Cole, Hawthorne, and Shade took positions around the narrow pass, they realized the Ghost had anticipated their alliance. "Something's wrong," Hawthorne called through her rifle scope. "These aren't regular cavalry escorts." Cole spotted it too. The approaching soldiers moved with too much precision, their formations slightly off standard military protocol. Ghost's men. The entire escort's been compromised. Shade cursed under his breath. "He's not trying to rob the shipment. He's already taken control of it." The realization came too late. Explosive charges, hidden along the pass walls, detonated in sequence. The controlled demolition cut off their escape routes while leaving the shipment untouched. "Clever bastard," Cole muttered, his gold-plated revolver already drawn. "He's using our plan against us." Ghost's men emerged from concealed positions, their weapons trained on the 3 hunters. Among them stood Deputy Hayes, his badge glinting in the morning sun. "Should have known," Hawthorne said, her Winchester still covering the high ground. "Town's been compromised from the start?" Hayes smiled coldly. "Ghost sends his regards. Says you're getting predictable, Shade." The situation deteriorated rapidly. More of Ghost's men appeared on the ridgeline, all wearing perfect reproductions of cavalry uniforms. Their tactical positioning showed extensive military training. Cole attempted to salvage their plan, firing 3 rapid shots that dropped the nearest attackers. Hawthorne's rifle cracked in response, picking off snipers on the ridge. Shade engaged in close combat, his modified holster allowing impossibly fast draws. But they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Ghost's men had spent months preparing this ambush point, using Treasury Department intelligence that only Cole should have known. "There's a mole in Treasury," Cole realized, ducking behind a boulder. That's how he knew our approach. Hawthorne provided covering fire as they retreated to a defensive position. Army intelligence, too, he's infiltrated both agencies. The firefight intensified. Ghost's men demonstrated their training using complex cavalry maneuvers adapted for the terrain. Each attack forced the hunters to reveal more of their own tactics. "He's not trying to kill us," Shade observed, reloading his weapon. "He's studying our responses." Cole noticed the same pattern. Every engagement was calculated to test their capabilities, reveal their training. The Ghost was gathering intelligence on his hunters. Their ammunition ran low as the sun climbed higher. Ghost's men maintained constant pressure, herding them toward a specific ravine. The tactical precision was unnerving. It's a testing ground, Hawthorne realized. Every shot, every move, he's evaluating potential recruits. The hunters attempted a breakthrough, combining their skills in a desperate gambit. Cole's lightning-fast shooting created openings. Hawthorne's precision fire exploited them, while Shade's close-quarter expertise kept them alive. But the Ghost had planned for this too. Signal flares lit the sky, and a second wave of attackers emerged. These wore different uniforms, perfect replicas of another cavalry unit that shouldn't exist. He's building multiple commands, Shade explained between shots. Each unit trained for specific tactics. This is just one division. Their failure revealed the true scope of Ghost's operation. He hadn't just infiltrated the military and treasury. He'd created an entire parallel force structure, hidden in plain sight. As they finally broke free of the ambush, all three hunters knew their alliance had been compromised. Ghost's knowledge of their plan suggested someone close to them was feeding him information. "We need to disappear," Cole said as they reached safer ground. "Regroup. Figure out who's the leak." Hawthorne nodded grimly. "He'll expect that too. This whole operation was a message. He's always ahead of us." Shade checked his wounds, none serious but all precisely placed. Number. This was a recruitment test. Ghost's offering us a choice. Join him or die. The failed plan had cost them more than ammunition and pride. It had revealed how deeply Ghost's influence ran, and how much they'd underestimated his resources. As they rode back to Devil's Fork, each hunter knew their next move would be crucial. The Ghost had turned their alliance against them, but he'd also revealed his greatest weakness, his obsession with recruiting the best. "He wants us alive," Cole observed. "That's a mistake we can use." The sun set on their failure, but in that defeat lay the seeds of a new strategy. Sometimes they realized losing the battle was necessary to win the war. Back in Devil's Fork, they assessed the true cost of their failure. The payroll shipment had been a carefully orchestrated show, revealing how deeply Ghost's influence penetrated official channels. "He's turned every failed ambush into an advantage," Hawthorne noted, cleaning her Winchester. "Each time the army sends forces to stop him, he recruits the best shooters, adds them to his shadow units." Cole examined recovered shell casings from the firefight. "These are treasury ammunition stamps, but with subtle modifications. He's not just copying our methods, he's improving them." The hunters converted the abandoned mining office into a temporary headquarters, analyzing every aspect of their failed plan. Maps and documents covered the walls, each marking another piece of Ghost's elaborate scheme. "Look at the pattern," Shade pointed to troop movements. "Every cavalry unit that engages his men loses a few soldiers afterward. They don't desert. They just transfer to units that don't exist." "Building his army one skirmish at a time," Cole agreed, using official channels to hide his recruitment. The payroll ambush was just another selection process. Hawthorne's intelligence training revealed another layer. The witness from the silver robbery. He's not just a loose end. Ghost left him alive to feed us specific information, guide our planning. Their failure had exposed the true sophistication of their adversary. Ghost wasn't just a bandit leader. He was creating a parallel military structure within the existing one, using their own tactics and resources against them. "Next move has to be perfect," Cole said, checking his gold-plated revolver. "Ghost's shown his reach, we show one weakness. He'll exploit it," Shade finished. "Like he did today. Using our alliance against us, testing our coordination." The defeat had taught them valuable lessons, but the price was high. Ghost now knew their capabilities, their tactics, and most dangerous of all, their tendency to work together. As night fell over Devil's Fork, the three hunters realized their failed plan had accomplished one thing, revealing the true scale of the threat they faced. The question now was whether they could turn this knowledge into an advantage before Ghost's shadow army became unstoppable. Cole initiated their infiltration plan at midnight. Dressed in a precise reproduction of cavalry uniforms, the three hunters separated to penetrate different aspects of Ghost's operation. "Remember," Cole warned, adjusting his lieutenant's insignia, "Ghost's men look for specific military behaviors. One wrong gesture could expose us." Hawthorne had transformed herself into a Treasury Department auditor, her Winchester hidden in modified saddlebags. "His counterfeiting operation will have financial oversight. That's my way in." Shade took the riskiest role, appearing to defect back to his old commander. "Ghost knows my methods. He'll be watching closely for any deception." They enacted their plan across three fronts. Cole integrated himself into a cavalry patrol, his practiced military bearing perfect down to the smallest detail. His gold-plated revolver was replaced with standard Army issue, though he kept his custom weapon hidden in a specially designed boot holster. "Lieutenant Anderson," he introduced himself to the patrol leader, using forged papers that would withstand even Ghost's scrutiny. Transfer from Fort Laramie. Hawthorne's infiltration proved more challenging. Ghost's financial network was sophisticated, with multiple layers of legitimate business covering illegal operations. She methodically audited each layer, building her cover while gathering intelligence. "These silver assay reports," she questioned the clerk, "show inconsistencies with Treasury standards." Her trained eye had spotted the subtle markers of Ghost's counterfeiting operation. Shade's approach was the most dangerous. He deliberately attracted attention, making his apparent disillusionment with hunting Ghost visible to known informants. 3 years tracking him," he proclaimed in the saloon, loud enough for Ghost's spies to hear. "Maybe it's time to admit he's winning this war." Their deception operated on multiple levels. Each hunter appeared to act independently while secretly coordinating their intelligence. Cole's patrol duties mapped Ghost's military movements. Hawthorne's audits traced his financial network, and Shade's seeming defection drew attention from the others. But Ghost's organization proved more sophisticated than anticipated. Every level had redundant security, each position carefully monitored. Cole discovered this when his patrol encountered another unit, one operating on orders that didn't exist in any official record. "Interesting maneuvers, Lieutenant," the other commander noted, studying Cole's unit formation. "Not standard cavalry procedure." Hawthorne faced similar scrutiny. Her audit revealed a pattern in the silver shipments, each robbery coordinated with legitimate transfers, creating perfect coverage for Ghost's counterfeit distribution. "These manifests," a senior, Kinkar questioned. "You're examining them quite thoroughly." The implied threat was clear. Shade's position grew increasingly precarious. Ghost's men watched his every move, testing his sincerity through carefully staged confrontations. "Heard you were quite the shot," one of Ghost's lieutenants challenged. "Care to demonstrate?" Their infiltration had succeeded in penetrating the outer layers of Ghost's operation, but each step deeper increased their risk of exposure. The organization's complexity suggested years of planning. With fail-safes and counterintelligence measures they were only beginning to understand. As dusk approached their third day undercover, all three hunters realized they'd entered a maze more elaborate than any had imagined. Ghost's shadow army wasn't just a military force. It was an entire parallel government structure, hidden within the legitimate institutions of 3 territories. Cole's patrol duties revealed another layer of Ghost's operation. Each cavalry unit had hidden specialists, former Army scouts, demolition experts, and marksmen, all recruited through carefully staged confrontations. Lieutenant Anderson, his sergeant reported, found something interesting during night patrol. The discovery was a hidden cache of modified weapons, each bearing Ghost's distinctive alterations. Meanwhile, Hawthorne's audit uncovered the true sophistication of the counterfeiting operation. Ghost wasn't just copying currency, he was creating an entire parallel banking system. Each silver shipment robbery coordinates with legitimate bank transfers, she explained in a coded message to Cole. He's laundering counterfeit money through official channels, using the stolen silver as collateral. Shade's position became increasingly dangerous as Ghost's inner circle tested his loyalty. Each test was designed to reveal any deception, forcing him to walk an impossibly fine line. The Ghost wants to meet, one of the lieutenants informed him. Says he remembers your skills from the war. Their infiltration had succeeded beyond expectations, but that success carried its own risks. The deeper they penetrated Ghost's organization, the more they realized how vulnerable their positions were. The breakthrough came during a midnight meeting behind the Silver Spur. Cole's patrol schedules, Hawthorne's financial trails, and Shade's intelligence converged to reveal Ghost's master plan. He's not building an army, Cole realized. He's building an entire shadow government. Military, financial, administrative, all operating within existing structures. The hunters' deception had revealed the true scope of their enemy's ambition. But as they gathered this crucial intelligence, each sensed they were being watched, tested, and evaluated by an unseen master strategist. Their infiltration had worked almost too perfectly. As they exchanged information in the darkness, all three wondered if their success was part of Ghost's plan all along. Their infiltration crumbled in a single devastating moment. At midnight, Ghost's men simultaneously surrounded all three hunters. Deputy Hayes stood with the attackers, holding their original plans. "Impressive deception," Hayes announced, "but Ghost has been watching since day one." Cole's patrol unit revealed themselves as Ghost's men. His sergeant leveled a rifle at him. "Lieutenant Anderson, or whatever your real name is, Anad, drop the revolver." Across town, Hawthorne found herself cornered in the Treasury office. The financial records she'd been investigating vanished, replaced by falsified documents implicating her in the counterfeiting operation. Shade faced the deadliest confrontation. Ghost's inner circle had gathered, each man a trained killer. "The commander suspected you'd try returning," one said. "Wanted to see how far you'd go." Their carefully constructed covers dissolved. Ghost had orchestrated their entire infiltration, using their deception to feed them false intelligence while gathering information about their methods. 3 weeks of surveillance, Hayes explained to Cole. Every move documented, every contact traced. Ghost knows your treasury connections, Army intelligence background, even that gold-plated revolver's history. Cole attempted to fight back, but Ghost's men had prepared specifically for his quick-draw technique. Multiple weapons covered every angle, eliminating his usual advantages. Hawthorne discovered her intelligence network had been compromised months ago. Each coded message she'd sent had been intercepted, decoded, and used to track their operation. "Ghost appreciates thorough documentation," the senior clerk told her. "Your audit notes were particularly helpful in understanding Treasury Department procedures." Shade's position became deadly as Ghost's lieutenants revealed how long they'd known of his deception. "Commander used you to test the others' loyalty," one explained. "Those who didn't report your activities were eliminated." The setback went beyond their immediate capture. Every piece of intelligence they'd gathered was suspect. Ghost had fed them exactly what he wanted them to know, using their infiltration to strengthen his own security. "Check their weapons," Hayes ordered. "Ghost wants them alive, but don't take chances, especially with Cole's revolver. There's more to it than gold plating." The hunter's capture revealed Ghost's true tactical genius. He hadn't just anticipated their infiltration. He'd used it to stage an elaborate counterintelligence operation. Cole managed to discard a hidden message before his capture. Ghost knew. Everything was compromised. Don't trust previous intelligence. As they were separated and secured, each hunter realized the magnitude of their failure. Ghost hadn't just outmaneuvered them. He'd turned their own methods against them, using their infiltration to perfect his security measures. Hayes approached Cole one last time. "Ghost sends a message. Thanks for the advanced training in Treasury and Army intelligence procedures. Your techniques will be very useful." The night ended with all three hunters in custody, their weapons confiscated, and their carefully gathered intelligence revealed as an elaborate deception. Ghost's shadow army hadn't just defeated them. It had used their skills to become stronger. As dawn approached, they understood the true extent of their setback. Every move they'd made had played into Ghost's plan, strengthening his organization while exposing their own methods. The hunter's escape came in stages. Cole's specially designed boot holster contained lockpicks disguised as ammunition. As Ghost's men transported him to their hidden camp, he worked methodically at his restraints. Hawthorne had anticipated capture, embedding coded messages throughout her audit reports. Each falsified document she'd examined contained hidden signals to her Army intelligence backup team. Shade's military experience proved crucial. He recognized the transport routes. Ghost was using old cavalry trails, predictable patterns that revealed their destination. Cole freed himself first, timing his move when the wagon hit a rough patch. His hidden gold-plated revolver, recovered from a concealed compartment, gave him the advantage he needed. Ghost made one mistake, he told the surviving guard. Thought he knew all my hiding spots. Hawthorne's escape utilized Treasury Department protocols. Each audit office maintained emergency signals. She'd activated them during her capture, bringing covert agents to Devil's Fork. The three hunters regrouped at an abandoned silver mine, chosen months ago as an emergency rendezvous point. Their losses were significant: weapons, intelligence, and most importantly, time. Ghost's counterintelligence was perfect, Shade admitted, nursing wounds from his escape. Used our own methods to strengthen his operation. Cole examined their remaining resources: his gold-plated revolver, Hawthorne's backup rifle, and Shade's knowledge of Ghost's military tactics were all they had left. "We lost the battle," Hawthorne said, "but gained crucial intelligence. Ghost's organization has weaknesses. Redundancy makes it predictable." Their recovery plan formed around this insight. Ghost's shadow army relied on precise coordination between units. Disrupt that coordination? Hit the communication points, Cole suggested. Telegraph offices, relay stations. Force him to reveal his command structure. Shade added military insight. His units follow cavalry protocols. Eliminate those patterns, they'll revert to basic training. Show us their real chain of command. Hawthorne's intelligence background completed the strategy. Financial transactions require synchronization. Disrupt the timing between legitimate and counterfeit operations. Their regrouping turned defeat into opportunity. Ghost had revealed his methods while studying theirs. Now they understood his organization's fundamental weakness, its own complexity. Cole cleaned his revolver, preparing for their counterattack. Ghost thinks he broke us. Time to show him why that's dangerous. Their recovery wasn't just physical. It was strategic. Each hunter had glimpsed different aspects of Ghost's operation during their captivity. Combined, these insights revealed the path to victory. As dawn approached, they finalized their new plan. Ghost had won the intelligence war, but the coming battle would be fought on different terms. "He expects us to retreat, regroup conventionally," Cole observed. "Instead, we attack immediately. Use his own tactics against him." The hunters emerged from their setback stronger, wiser, and most importantly, united with a clear purpose. Ghost's perfect operation had one critical flaw. It had revealed itself to the three people most capable of destroying it. Their recovery complete, they prepared to turn the tables on their adversary. Sometimes, they realized, you have to lose everything to see the path to victory clearly. The hunters initiated their final strategy at dawn. Cole positioned himself at the telegraph office, intercepting Ghost's communications. Hawthorne took high ground near the bank, her rifle covering key intersections. Shade moved through back alleys, identifying Ghost's hidden forces. 3 units south of the saloon, Hawthorne reported through prearranged signals. Military formation, but relaxed. They don't expect us so soon. Cole's treasury experience revealed Ghost's immediate plans. Major silver shipment arriving tomorrow, legitimate cargo mixed with counterfeit currency. He's consolidating his resources. Shade identified the trap within Ghost's movements. He's thinning his forces deliberately, wants us to think he's vulnerable. Their counter-strategy evolved from these observations. Ghost expected them to target his weakest points. Instead, they would strike at the heart of his operation. "Look at his patrol patterns," Cole pointed out. "Every unit protects specific buildings. Not random, they're guarding components of his counterfeiting operation. Hawthorne's scope revealed more details. Print shop basement. Modified presses running at night. They're not just copying money, they're producing official documents. The complexity of Ghost's organization became their advantage. Each component required precise coordination. Disrupt one piece. Telegraph office first, Cole decided. Cut his communication, force him to expose his command structure. Shade added crucial tactical insight. His men rely on synchronized movements. Eliminate their coordination, they'll reveal their fallback positions. The hunters prepared methodically. Cole's gold-plated revolver was loaded with custom ammunition designed to disable rather than kill. Hawthorne modified her rifle's scope for night operations. Shade mapped every escape route and choke point in Devil's Fork, but Ghost's presence loomed over their preparations. His shadow army had grown stronger, incorporating their techniques from the failed infiltration. He's adapting our methods, Hawthorne observed, using Treasury protocols to secure his financial network, Army intelligence techniques for counter-surveillance. Cole spotted the pattern. Not just adapting, improving. Each defeat makes his operation more sophisticated. The final confrontation would test their combined skills against an enemy who'd studied their every move. Ghost had turned their own tactics against them, but in doing so, he'd revealed his greatest weakness. He's a perfectionist, Shade explained. Every operation has to be flawless. Force him to improvise. The hunters positioned their resources carefully. Each piece of their plan had multiple layers designed to confuse Ghost's intelligence network. As night fell, they made final preparations. The coming battle would determine not just their fate, but the future of 3 territories. Remember, Cole warned, checking his weapon one last time. Ghost thinks he knows all our moves. Time to show him how wrong he is. The build-up to their final confrontation transformed Devil's Fork into a chessboard of hidden forces in strategic positions. Tomorrow would bring either their greatest victory or final defeat. The tension escalated as they observed Ghost's men fortifying key positions. Each movement revealed another layer of his operation's sophistication. Bank vault's been modified, Hawthorne reported through her scope. False walls, hidden compartments. He's built a fortress within a fortress. Cole identified the pattern in Ghost preparations. He's consolidating his resources, moving his best men to defensive positions. Expect us to strike at dawn. Shade's military experience provided crucial context. These aren't just defensive preparations. He's positioning for a major operation, something bigger than silver theft or counterfeiting. Their surveillance revealed Ghost's ultimate plan. The modified bank vault, the forged military documents, the precise unit positioning, all pointed to something unprecedented. He's not just taking Devil's Fork, Cole realized. He's making it his command center. 3 territories controlled from one point. Hawthorne spotted additional details through her scope. Supply wagons arriving under military escort, but those aren't regular army supplies. Ammunition, printing materials, official seals. The hunters recognized the significance. Ghost wasn't preparing for a battle. He was establishing permanent control. Devil's Fork would become the heart of his shadow government. Tomorrow's silver shipment is cover, Shade explained. While everyone watches that, his real operation begins. Their final preparations took on new urgency. Ghost had transformed their failed infiltration into an advantage, but he'd also revealed his obsession with control and perfection. That's our opening, Cole determined. Hit him where he can't maintain that perfect coordination. Force him to choose between his operation's components. As midnight approached, the hunters finalized their positions. Each had studied Ghost's methods, understood his tactical brilliance, and prepared to turn it against him. The coming dawn would bring either their redemption or complete defeat. Devil's Fork's future hung in the balance, and only they stood between Ghost's shadow army and total control of 3 territories. Dawn broke over Devil's Fork as the hunters executed their final strategy. Cole triggered their offensive by seizing the telegraph office, cutting Ghost's communications. Hawthorne's rifle fire disabled key defensive positions while Shade led a direct assault on the bank. Ghost's response was immediate and devastating. His shadow army emerged in full force, revealing the true scope of his operation. Soldiers appeared from hidden positions, each unit moving with precise coordination. "So predictable," Ghost's voice echoed from the bank's entrance. Victor Blackwood emerged, his scarred face visible in the morning light. The LeMat revolver in his hand was aimed at Cole. "You built all this," Cole responded, his gold-plated revolver steady. "Just to recreate your old command?" Blackwood's laugh was cold. "Built? I revealed what already existed. Every army has its shadow. I just gave it purpose." The street erupted in gunfire. Ghost's men demonstrated their perfect training, but the hunters had anticipated this. Cole's shots disrupted their formation, while Hawthorne's rifle forced them into Shade's prepared kill zone. "Your need for control," Cole called out between shots, "makes you vulnerable. Perfect coordination requires perfect conditions." The battle shifted as Ghost's operation began to fracture. Without telegraph coordination, his units fell into confusion. The hunters exploited every breakdown, forcing his men to reveal their fallback positions. Blackwood recognized the trap too late. His shadow army's strength, its precise coordination, became its weakness. Each unit's dependence on synchronized movement left them vulnerable when communications failed. "You learned nothing from the war," Shade shouted to his former commander. "An army isn't about perfect control, it's about adaptation." The decisive moment came when Ghost's financial operation crumbled. Hawthorne's planted evidence triggered Treasury Department investigations, freezing his legitimate accounts. Without financial coordination, his counterfeit distribution collapsed. Cole pressed the advantage, leading a charge toward the bank. His gold-plated revolver proved its worth, each shot precise and devastating. Ghost's perfect defense fractured under pressure, revealing the man's fundamental flaw, his inability to abandon failing plans. "It's over, Victor," Cole announced, cornering Ghost in his own vault. "Your shadow army is exposed." But Blackwood had one final move. The vault's hidden compartments contained enough evidence to implicate government officials across 3 territories. "Shoot me," he smiled, "and this evidence goes public. Your precious institutions collapse." The hunters' final victory came not through gunfire, but understanding. Cole holstered his revolver, while Hawthorne and Shade secured the perimeter. "That evidence," Cole said quietly, "proves nothing except your own obsession with control. Real power isn't about perfect coordination, it's about trust." Ghost's operation crumbled as federal forces arrived, led by agents who'd followed the hunters' coded signals. His shadow army, stripped of its perfect coordination, surrendered in groups. The aftermath revealed the full scope of Ghost's ambition. His organization had infiltrated every level of territorial government, building a parallel structure that could have controlled 3 territories. "You could have won," Cole told the captured Ghost, "if you hadn't tried to make everything perfect." Devil's Fork returned to normal, its secrets buried with Ghost's operation. The hunters' victory had prevented more than just a criminal takeover. They'd stopped the birth of an invisible empire. As they prepared to leave town, each hunter carried lessons from their confrontation. Perfect control breeds perfect vulnerability. True strength lies in adaptation, trust, and the courage to embrace chaos. Cole's gold-plated revolver had fired its last shot in Devil's Fork, but its legend would grow. The tale of 3 hunters who destroyed a shadow army became part of frontier mythology, though few knew the full truth. Ghost's final words haunted them. "You haven't destroyed the shadow, you've just shown it where to hide better." The hunters parted ways, knowing their victory had changed them. Sometimes the deadliest enemies aren't those who oppose you, but those who mirror your own strengths too perfectly. Devil's Fork faded into history, its brush with invisible empire becoming just another frontier tale. But somewhere in the territories, the shadows still moved, waiting for another commander to give them purpose. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.